about anxiety and how anxiety is treated in therapy, what are the recent approaches that are used. And today I will be explaining about process-based acceptance commitment therapy approach. And if before for decades psychotherapy has been organized around a medical model where uh, a disorder was identified, the problems were identified, and generally a standardized treatment protocol was applied for everyone. Nowadays, there are new approaches that are emerging that are trying to understand people's needs and their situations in more details, and to organize, to provide them with more detailed approach that would fit their own needs. And this comes largely from a system like DSM-5, where we were classifying mental health problems into categories. But there was a problem during those times. Human suffering doesn't exist in clean certain categories. People rarely fit into one diagnosis, and for instance, two people with the same diagnosis can have completely different internal experiences, or it might also change and vary according to their culture, upbringing, experiences. And this leads to a question: what if we are treating labels instead of mechanisms? And this led to discussions that these general approaches, general treatment protocols maybe were not serving the people in the best life. And that was the origin of a more detailed organization of treatment plans and understanding human behavior in more detail and having a more detailed approach. And another challenge was that there were there are a lot of cases with comorbidities when anxiety and depression go along. It's very often, or for instance, OCD comes with anxiety and depression, and it was more difficult to treat all of these challenges at the same time. And process-based approaches, acceptance commitment approaches, or approaches such as solution-focused brief therapy, they are in a sense being a healing for a lot of comorbidities at the same time. And this is exactly how it's happening. For instance, most clients don't have just anxiety or just depression. Instead, they might be experiencing rumination, avoidance, emotional dysregulation, threat sensitivity, and this diagnosis becomes less informative than underlying processes. So what the process-based approach is looking at processes that are causing these challenges, and by focusing on the processes, as a result, most of these challenges are being handled and used and treated. And the next challenge is that one of the most critical scientific problems in psychology is that it assumes what is true for the group is true for the individual. However, oftentimes we see that problems are varying according to a person, and their needs are varying according to experiences, social situations, their rituals, habits, biological tendencies, and therefore group average cannot be equal to individual patterns. And everyone's anxiety network is unique, and your triggers, reactions, and learning history are unique. Therefore, when we are applying a general protocol for somebody with different these triggers and situation, we are in a sense decreasing the treatment outcomes of healing and change. However, when we find and map these processes that are affecting the situation and that might contribute to change, it's more likely that the treatment would serve and heal the client faster and would have better results. And therefore, in process-based therapy, we are using ideographic person-specific analysis. So different diagnoses often share the same mechanisms, such as avoidance. For instance, anxiety might be related with underlying processes such as avoidance, and The same might be true for depression, and there also can be rumination, for instance, in anxiety and depression, and there can be cognitive fusion when a person is too close fused with the thoughts, and that causes OCD or depression or anxiety, or there can be increased threat hypervigilance in all of these challenges. Therefore, in a sense, process-based approach is handling all of these underlying processes while we are in therapy examining any challenges that might be caused by these processes, and slowly using all of these detailed processes in order to change. So extended evolutionary meta model is the core engine and the heart of process-based therapy, and it's based on the simple but powerful evolutionary principles where adaptation happens through variation, which includes trying new behaviors, activating new behavioral patterns, and selection, keeping what works, and through retention, which means maintaining useful patterns and using them even more. And there are 8 dimensions of it. First of all, imagine that your mind is constantly talking, which is the case. All of us will have automatic thoughts, and if you will listen to your mind, you will find that it will tell you all the time, it will tell you different stories, and all day long it produces thoughts as, for instance, what if I fail? Something is wrong with me. I shouldn't feel this way. And important part is that having these thoughts is not the problem, but every human mind has these thoughts, and even confident people have negative thoughts. But the problem is that believing that these thoughts are absolute truth, or the way we are relating to these thoughts. And in anxiety, we often see fusion when we have automatic thoughts, but we start to believe them as they are literal truth. For instance, if your mind is telling you that you are a failure, if you start to believe that this is your identity, if you start to label yourself, then it can become problematic, and this might be causing even more anxiety, and this might be causing avoidance or procrastination, which is led by anxiety. So therefore, examining these processes with which thoughts we are fused, teaching the person to notice their thoughts and to relate to them as thoughts, not just as all the time the literal truth, is the point of change, where the change is happening and where the healing is happening. For instance, imagine that if your mind is telling you, I'm going to mess this up, it might feel like certainty, and you would say, but you don't say, I'm having the thought that I might fail. But when you say, I will fail, your mind interprets it as a real truth, and when you get fused with the thought, when you get too close to the thought, it's difficult to focus your attention on other possibilities, or to think about different perspectives, different things, and it's more likely that this thought is going to impact your mood, your affect, and your behavior. Therefore, at the point when you start to notice the thought, just as a mental event, it will create more psychological flexibility and freedom of action for you to relate to the thought differently, to see it from different perspectives, aspects, and to start taking action even in the presence of uncomfortable thoughts, which is called diffusion. And imagine if your mind says you are not good enough. When you are fused with it, it might feel heavy, it might feel true, and it will start control your actions. And you might start to avoid, to stay quiet, or pull back from your life. And when you notice that this is just a thought, it will be easier for you to take action, to take steps towards your goals, or to generate new behaviors, to start new habits, and to learn to relate to these thoughts differently, and to act in line with your goals or what you are trying to achieve. And oftentimes, we are noticing that there are rigid rules that are emerging with anxiety. And for instance, if a person has rigid rules such as I must do this, I have to do this, or tries to control everything, assuming that they can control everything, this also might cause overthinking or anxiety. For instance, if you are trying, if you think that I must not feel anxious, even this rigid rule might be the source of anxiety, because you are trying to control, and when you are trying to suppress or avoid the feeling, it will come back with a greater power. And since you are focusing on anxiety, on trying to control the anxiety, it will be more difficult for you to do things apart from anxiety, to focus on your attention on other things, or to think about, to focus on your work, for instance, education, or whatever you are trying to achieve at that moment. So instead of it, acceptance, commitment, and process-based approaches provide us with different alternatives. Instead of trying to control feelings or spending too much time on trying to avoid feelings, suppress feelings, they give us alternatives of just noticing the feelings and thoughts, letting them be there, and to focusing, redirecting your attention and your actions towards what you want to achieve, because it's still possible. For instance, look about your past. Were there any times when you were anxious and you still were able to take steps to speak? And when your focus is focused on, when your attention is focused just on anxiety, it's more difficult to take action. But when you let it be there, it stops disturbing you so much, and it gets easier for you to take action and to be more flexible. So and so if previously, for instance, feeling anxious was equal to failure, or having a thought was equal to danger, when you start to notice your thoughts and feelings just as mental events, they stop being so dangerous for you. They stop controlling your actions. They stop controlling or dictating your emotions, and you stop fighting with your thoughts, and you don't spend so much time trying to control your feelings, and you don't get stuck in a loop. And this creates an opportunity for you to start doing things, to use your energy, your time, and your efforts for things that matter for you. And the more you try to control your thoughts, the more they control you. So what does therapy actually do is it doesn't force you to think positively, or it doesn't invite you to get rid of thoughts. Instead, it helps you change your relationship with thinking. It changes your relationship with the thoughts or feelings, and therapy is helping you to take action despite these uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. So instead of thinking the thought is true, you begin to see that this is one of possible thoughts, one of possible alternatives, and this is not the only reality, and that there can be other perspectives, other thoughts, and you become more open and less rigid. So as we have mentioned about fusion, when a person is too close with their thoughts, and thoughts start to dictate their behavior and impact their mood. On the contrary, in diffusion, it's the ability to take space, take distance from the thoughts, and start to see thoughts as mental events and not facts. And a small shift that changes everything. So instead of telling I'm going to fail, you start to say I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. And this creates more possibility to think about alternatives, to think about other perspectives. And when the distance is created, in that space, something powerful happens. You can choose what to do next. You have time to decide how to respond to these thoughts. Think about it like this. Your thoughts are like subtitles on a movie screen. They appear automatically, but you don't have to obey every thought that you have or believe everything that's written on the screen. You don't need to fight everything, but you can just notice them, and you can still take action, take steps towards the life that you want to achieve. So your mind is not your enemy. Our minds were designed in order to protect us from possible threats, especially during challenging times in ancient times. Our minds were designed in a manner to keep us safe. However, in daily life, since there is a lot of stimulation and we are being exposed to screens, it more likely that with stress we start to have too many thoughts, we start to overthink, and if we are not able to notice the thoughts as mental events, they might start to influence our behavior, our mood, cause anxiety. And the point where you start to notice your thoughts as mental events, as internal experiences, this creates more psychological flexibility, and you are more likely to change behavior. It gets easier for you to take steps even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. So if initially your mind was designed to protect you, when you start to get overfused fused with the thoughts, these thoughts might start to limit your life, shrink your world, and might cause to avoidance, procrastination, and you might stop to do things that were meaningful for you. And in therapy, we help the person to realize, to start to see them as mental events, and to come to the point that you still can have thoughts and you can still move forward, and you don't need to win every argument with your mind, and you just need to stop letting it to run everything, to control your actions. And regarding affect emotions, imagine you feel something uncomfortable. For instance, maybe you feel sad, maybe you feel angry, maybe you feel disappointed, anxiety, and your first instinct is probably, I don't want to feel this, how do I make this go away? And this makes total sense. It's understandable that these feelings are uncomfortable, and oftentimes they might lead to isolation or avoidance, procrastination, or two different kinds of behavior that might be leading you, but no one wakes up wanting to feel anxious or overwhelmed. So that's why we avoid a lot of our feelings, or we are being fused with the feelings, and we don't notice how they are causing our behavior. Maybe we start arguing with people, maybe it can start to influence our relationships, and maybe you start to distract yourself, overthinking, to try to solve every feeling or not to feel the feeling. But in a long run, this would cause even more anxiety, more panic, more stronger emotions, because as you are trying to suppress or numb these feelings, your mind will start to interpret it as if there is a real danger, and it might cause if you are trying to avoid certain feeling, then there should be something dangerous about it, and therefore it might be more difficult for you to start doing things that you were avoiding. And avoiding situations might cause even more triggers, and therefore even if it seems that it works, avoidance, that it works at first time, you feel a bit better, you feel calmer, you feel more in control, but in the long run, every time you avoid a feeling, your brain learns that there is something dangerous, and then the feelings get stronger, faster, and in the long run, it creates suffering, and you stop avoiding, you stop doing things that you enjoy or you find meaningful. Therefore, instead of trying to get rid of feelings or trying to decrease them, we can choose to notice them and to take action even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings. We can let the feeling be there, not running away from it, not fighting it, and even if it's uncomfortable, we can teach our brain that this is not dangerous and that you can still feel bad, anxious, overwhelmed, and this is the common trait of being a human, and we can still learn to take action even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings. And as you do this, your brain slowly will learn that there is nothing dangerous about it, and each time when you expose yourself to situations that were causing anxiety would slowly decrease, and it will get easier for you to do things that you wanted to do when anxiety was present. So if everything also, as I have mentioned, it's important to notice the thoughts about your feelings. For instance, many people who are experiencing panic attacks are increasing panic attack symptoms because of secondary reactions, because they start to feel scared about the feeling and or about the symptoms. And when they feel more scared or anxious, the anxiety increases, and this creates a more loop which is difficult to break. That's why noticing which thoughts you have about the feelings. For instance, some people are afraid to experience certain things, certain feelings. They start to avoid it, and this might be causing a problem for them. So noticing these patterns that are problematic can help you to break the cycle, to change the processes that are causing the problems, and also asking yourself, what do you want instead? What do you want to achieve? What is your goal? Can help you to be more willing and motivated to experience these uncomfortable feelings and to be exposed to them and to take action even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings. So here actually you are going to change your relationship with your feelings. If in the initial phases you were afraid to feel these feelings and it was causing avoidance, when you start to see them as mental events, and when you eventually decide what's motivating you, why you want to achieve certain things, you will be more willing to take action and to experience suffering, to open space for uncomfortable feelings and to take action. And the next section is about attention. We are also using attentional flexibility in therapies. We are trying to understand where the person's attention is placed on. For instance, oftentimes we might notice that the person is stuck on their one version of them. For instance, imagine if a father is experiencing challenges with caregiving, and they are feeling exhausted, they feel anxious or depressed. However, when we notice where is the attention at that point, for instance, in this case, attention is just on the role of being a father, and this might create stress for them. However, when we notice other roles, such as maybe they are a grandfather, maybe they are somebody's child, they are colleague, student, and they have a variety of other identities and roles, and you are kind of expanding attention or noticing. For instance, some people are more focus their attention on the problem and they forget about things that are going well, or some things that cause gratefulness, gratitude in their life. So noticing where is the attention and expanding attention is also a source of psychological flexibility. And anxiety might be hijacking attention toward threat. So when a person is anxious, generally they are more focused just on the problem or just on the threat, and their mind is on the alarm mode. However, noticing other things that are happening in their life, or noticing that this is not the only alternative that might happen, helps the person to calm down and to create again this space between their feelings, their thoughts, and makes the variation more likely. Like they start to take different approaches and behavioral patterns rather than the ones that are learned. So you don't just feel anxious, you see the world through a threat filter. Like anytime when you are anxious or depressed, you are using certain lens to see the world. For instance, depressed person is more likely to notice just negativities that are happening or challenges that are in their life. Whenever you change your attention and your lens, the person starts to see other truths, other realities, and be able to notice other things that are happening. And also oftentimes when a person is depressed or anxious, they are more in the future or in the past. However, helping them to connect with present moment, because change is happening in the present moment. And again, learning to relate to thoughts, to experiences, to emotions differently, that is also happening in the present moment. Paying attention to what's happening in their body, or which thoughts, which feelings they have, what's happening in their mind, and gaining another approach, another alternative approach is the point where the change happens, and which leads to change and behave like changing behavior. So imagine your mind has a built-in an alarm system, for instance, and the mind's job, the role is to keep you safe. So when anxiety shows up, that alarm system becomes oversensitive. So when person is panicked or anxious, they are more paying attention to the clues that might cause any threat or any stress. And it's like a smoke detector that doesn't just go off when there is a fire. It goes off when you make toast. Therefore, what does it mean for your attention? It means your attention gets pulled automatically toward anything that might be a threat, not because you choose it, but because not because you are weak, but because your brain is trying very hard to protect you. So instead of seeing that this is just a normal conversation, your mind can be telling, what if I say something wrong? What if they judge me? What if something goes wrong? And here's the key part. You don't just have anxious thoughts, you start to look at the world through the lens of these anxious thoughts, anxious perspective, anxious feelings. And like wearing a pair of glasses that only highlight danger, neutral faces look critical, silence feels uncomfortable, and small uncertainties might feel like big risks. And this, for instance, explains why the people who are depressed or anxious, they would notice the slightest keys about negativities or about stress, and they become hypersensitive because their attention is already placed just on anxiety, just on things that might cause danger or threat, or their attention like they are looking through the thoughts of anxiety, for instance. But when you change your perspective, when you start to see things from different perspectives, your views are changing, your relationship towards feelings and thoughts and experiences is changing, and this becomes the point of change. So in therapy, we are trying to help the person to gain attentional flexibility. For instance, when you notice that your attention is stuck or locked onto a threat, what we want to build is the ability to say, I see anxiety, but I can also choose to look somewhere else. Not forcibly, not by fighting, but by shifting. For instance, from what could go wrong, you can say what's actually happening right now. And after that, once the space is created between the thoughts and feelings and you, there is a time, a distance for you to decide who do you want to be in this moment, what's happening. Like, you still can have anxiety, you still can have challenging thoughts, and you are the person who is choosing at that moment how to respond to these feelings, how to respond to these thoughts. And they are the one who are responsible of becoming which version of them they would like to see at that point. And this becomes the point, the choice point, where you decide how to act, what to do, and how to create change. And another section aspect we are considering in therapy is the sense of self. Many people often fuse with identity narratives. For instance, I often notice that if a person was anxious for a very long period of time, they even don't notice how they start to speak about themselves, that I'm an anxious person, I'm someone who experiences anxiety all the times. And as they get fused with these thoughts, and they start to see their identity as labels, and this creates more challenges in responding to anxiety and different feelings differently. So instead of saying I'm a person experiencing anxiety, therapy helps the person to observe their self in different contexts, and helps to create psychological distance from identity storage. For instance, if someone is is having anxiety and avoiding things, there would be also times when they will have anxiety, but they are not avoiding, they are taking action. So we are helping the person to notice these exceptions and to help them to understand what's motivating them, what's inspiring them, what is helping them to take action. And then we can use these values or whatever is motivating, whatever is important for them, to carry those instances of success into different contexts. And if a person was able to take action, even in the presence of anxiety in the previous context, we can carry this success into different contexts, and we can use the same strategies, the same sources of motivation, values, in order to take action. So imagine this, you have felt anxious so many times that at some point it stopped feeling like just a feeling, and it started to feel as if who you are. For instance, I'm just an anxious person, this is my personality, this is who I am. And what happens, something that it doesn't feel like anxiety is something you experience, it feels like anxiety is something who you are, or depression something as who you are. And because if anxiety is who you are, then how do you change it? How do you move forward? How do you imagine a different life? It becomes more problematic, permanent. But when you just start to notice that anxiety is just something that's coming and going and visiting your depression, symptoms can change, that they are not going to stay with you forever, and they don't constitute your essence, they are not about your identity, it creates more psychological flexibility and helps to change. So anxiety is something happening within you, not something that defines who you are. And when you learn to observe your sense of self, this also creates more freedom for you. For instance, there are times when you feel anxious. However, there are also instances when you feel calm, when you are successful, when you are happy, and being able to notice all these senses of self makes you to feel more relaxed, more calm, and might help you to motivate for taking action. So imagine, for instance, you have anxiety and your mind says you can't handle this. Instead of automatically believing and acting to these thoughts, you begin to notice, I'm having the thought that I can't handle this. And this is the moment that helps you to shift the thought and to notice that the thought is still there and anxiety is still there, but you are bigger than your thoughts and your feelings, and that you are capable of taking action and doing things that matter for you, even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. And the last section is motivation. We are all very different human beings, and what motivates someone might not be motivating the other person. So it's important to understand yourself, what's motivating you, what's inspiring you, what's important for you. And when an avoidance is happening, when we start to avoid things, when we start to procrastinate because of anxiety, it's when we are acting to reduce fear, or we are taking the choice point as fear or anxiety. But whenever we understand what matters for us, what are our values, we can learn to act to what matters. So and it will make us more willing to suffer, for instance, to be open to uncomfortable feelings, and this can help us to take action even in the presence of uncomfortable feelings. And you are about, for instance, to do something that matters for you, such as speak in a meeting, explain something, go to a social event, start something new. And when anxiety shows up, in that moment you have two possible directions. Either avoidance-based motivation, you can say, okay, I'm feeling anxious and I'm going to avoid it, or you get fused with the thoughts, what if something goes wrong? So what do? You start to avoid, cancel, delay, or escape, and it works temporarily. You have a relief in a short term. However, in the long run, this might cause even more anxiety or problems or avoidance or challenges for you. And over time, something important happens. Your world will get smaller, your behavioral repertoire will shrink, your confidence will shrink, and you might feel uh, you might feel anxious about avoiding, procrastinating. You might start to have critical thoughts about yourself, and eventually you might stop believing that you can change anything or you can take any action. So anxiety becomes more powerful, and it starts to dictate your behavior because your brain learns that avoiding equals safety and facing equals danger. However, when we use motivation, when we use values, it becomes possible to break this cycle and to create behavioral change and to break the cycle and to create change. For instance, let's look at a different direction. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of anxiety, we can try asking, what actually matters for me at this moment? For instance, I might feel anxious, but what's important for me at this point? It's important for me to explain what I have learned, to share information with other people, or I want to connect with other people. I want to have relationships. I want to grow my career. I want to learn something new. And when you if you will be able to understand what's driving you, what's important for you, what's your source of motivation, it will be easier for you to take action even when you feel anxious, even when you feel scared. And now anxiety is still there, and nothing magical happens to remove it, but something changes. Your reason for acting changes, and your relationship to these thoughts and feelings you start to change. If before you were relating and looking to uncomfortable feelings and thoughts or experiences from the lens of fear, anxiety, now you start to look at things from the lens of kindness, for instance, or willingness to be courageous or to contribute to others, or uh, to express your care. And that's where the change happens. And instead of I act so I don't feel anxious, you move forward and act because this is important and this matters for me. And why this changes everything? Because if your life is built around avoiding anxiety, anxiety becomes the boss, someone who is controlling you, and it decides where you go, what you do, who do you become. But if your life is built around values, you become the one who is choosing direction. Even if anxiety comes along for the ride, you are afraid of speaking in front of others. Avoidance plans, for instance, I'll stay quiet so I don't feel anxious. In a short term, it creates relief, and in long term, it creates more missed opportunities, more fear. And when you are choosing the values path, you are saying, I speak because sharing ideas matters for me. I speak because contributing to others' knowledge is important for me. And even if anxiety is still there, your voice might shake, your hands might shake, you might hesitate, you might feel scared, but you are moving towards something meaningful. And here, courage doesn't become the absence of fear, but it's moving with fear in the direction of what matters for you. And you don't need to wait until anxiety disappears to live your life. You don't need to feel ready. You just can simply start asking, if the fear or anxiety wasn't in charge, what would I choose right now? And then you can take a small step in that direction, even when anxiety is present. And your mind will always try to pull you towards safety, uh, would try to keep you safe from possible pain. For instance, if you have experienced any painful stories or experiences in the past, such as rejection, loss, uh, uncomfortable or painful feelings, anytime when your mind will see anything that is close to that, it will try to convince you uh, to keep you safe from that uncomfortable feelings, and this might cause avoidance, this might cause arguments, or might cause you to help you to stay safe. However, when you act from lens and from what's meaningful for you, is it contribution, is it kindness, is it care, is it courage, uh, a person starts to take action even in the presence of these uncomfortable feelings, because it's important for them. And it can build around meaning, connection, growth, or what truly matters for you. And therapy helps you to learn to carry fear, but still walk towards your values. And as a result of all these processes that we were discussing, this would create more psychological flexibility and a change of behavior for you. So, for instance, when anxiety is present and when you start to procrastinate or to avoid, there is less action, there is shrinked behavior repertoire, which leads to less learning and which creates more challenges, more fear, more anxiety. And whereas in therapy, in psychotherapy, we help the person to notice thoughts, feelings, or the way they relate to feelings, thoughts, or experiences. And we help the person to change their relationship with these aspects. And we teach the person, we help the person to arrange their attention towards things that matter for them, to find their sources of motivation, their values, and by asking questions, we help the person to understand what they want to achieve, what are their goals, and slowly using these processes and noticing the problematic patterns and teaching the person to see things from different perspectives. This is how the change happens and how the behavior changes. And it's also important to consider biological factors, genetical factors, and to pay attention that you take care of yourself, about your self-care. For instance, it's important to have a good sleep and to encourage the person to have a good quality of sleep and to be physically active, and to take into consideration how their physiology responds to stress. And this is also important to consider while we are trying to understand the human behavior or trying to create change, because our bodies are not separate from mind and it's part of the same system. For instance, in depression, certain hormones, they stop to be produced or their production is decreased, and by using physical activity or enough sleep, you can still help the person to be able to achieve this change that they are willing to achieve, because physical activity, good sleep, also contributes to their mental well-being, to the brain functioning. And process-based approach also considers social-cultural context, because, for instance, if for some people being anxious is quite normal and it's a normal way of expressing their feelings, for the other cultures it might be that they are experiencing very high levels of stress. Therefore, it's important to know the person's culture, social-cultural perspectives, where they are coming, which contexts are involved, in order to be able to create a treatment plan or approach that is suitable for their situation and perspective. And humans are relational beings. Isolation increases more suffering. According to research, most of mental challenges and symptoms are increasing when the person is isolated, whereas socializing creates decrease in symptoms, and feelings of belonging reduces this symptomology. And culture is important in shaping meaning, values, and coping and understanding, seeing the world, understanding and relating to the person and their self. what we have discussed so far is that process-based approach sees anxiety as a network of interacting processes. For instance, there might be a trigger. Trigger might involve a situation, an experience, a feeling, a thought, and then you are having a thought regarding that trigger, and your body reacts to the thought and to this reaction, and this might lead to procrastination, to avoidance, and further isolation and further deterioration of the situation. So when we teach the person, or when we help the person to notice the first trigger, actually we are breaking the cycle and we are creating psychological freedom for them, and this leads to behavioral change. I hope this video was helpful for you to understand what the therapy looks like and how we are working in therapy in order to understand the human behavior and to create change. I will continue to share information in further weeks. If this was helpful for you, or if you have any questions, don't forget to leave your questions in the comments. Thank you for coming, thank you for your time, and see you in the next videos. Take good care of yourself.